High above the desert floor, where sand buries secrets and silence stretches into eternity, lie stories carved in stone and shrouded in time. Ancient Egypt, with its temples and tombs, doesn't just whisper history. It dares us to question everything we thought we knew. This is not about myths or made-up fantasies. These are real enigmas, confirmed by science and still unsolved. From vanished queens to chambers no one can enter, something waits beneath the sand. And tonight, we go looking for it. No need to watch, just listen. Let the stillness speak. Let the ruins breathe. And let your mind drift deeper into the heart of history's most relentless riddle. Nefertiti's face is one of the most recognized in all of history. Serene, symmetrical, almost supernaturally perfect. But beyond that elegant limestone bust lies a question that has confounded archaeologists for over a century. Where is she? Nefertiti ruled alongside Pharaoh Akhenaten during one of Egypt's most disruptive periods. Together, they abandoned the traditional pantheon of gods in favor of a single deity, the sun disk Aten. That religious pivot sent shockwaves through Egyptian society, challenging priests, political power, and thousands of years of tradition. Nefertiti wasn't merely a royal consort, she was a co-ruler, possibly even a pharaoh in her own right. Depicted performing kingly rituals and receiving tribute, her prominence was unparalleled. Yet, when the sands of time settled, her final resting place disappeared. What makes this mystery more vexing is how little physical evidence remains. No tomb, no mummy, just fragments of art, scattered inscriptions, and the void her absence leaves behind. Traditionally, queens were buried near their husbands in elaborately decorated tombs meant to ensure safe passage into the afterlife. But Akhenaten's own tomb at Amarna, their short-lived capital, revealed only broken remains. No trace of Nefertiti, not even confirmation that Akhenaten himself was ever buried there. Some theorists believe he and Nefertiti were moved posthumously, perhaps to avoid desecration by those who violently restored the old gods. Others suggest Nefertiti's burial was deliberately concealed, erased from history in the backlash against her husband's monotheistic revolution. But if so, why does her face remain, immortalized in sculpture but severed from location? In 2015, British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves ignited a global frenzy with a provocative theory. By analyzing ultra-high-resolution scans of Tutankhamun's tomb, he noticed faint lines beneath the paint, lines that looked like bricked-up doorways. Reeves proposed that Tut's famous tomb, found in 1922 by Howard Carter, was only a side chamber of a larger, undiscovered royal tomb. And that tomb, he suggested, might belong to Nefertiti. Initial radar scans seemed to support his claim. There were anomalies behind the walls, cavities, perhaps rooms. The Egyptian government permitted further testing. Teams from Japan, Italy, and the United States joined in, each bringing advanced radar and thermal imaging. But results were contradictory. One scan suggested nothing unusual. Another hinted at irregular voids. A third was inconclusive. The debate stalled. Despite the inconclusive findings, the allure of Reeves's theory remains. After all, Tutankhamun died young, likely without a tomb of his own prepared in time. His burial chamber is small, unusually so for a pharaoh, and oddly asymmetrical. Scholars have long noted that parts of the tomb appear hastily repurposed, with walls unfinished or quickly adorned. If Nefertiti's tomb was commandeered for Tutankhamun's sudden death, it would explain the cramped design and unusual layout. But the deeper reason this theory persists isn't just architectural, it's psychological. The idea that one of history's most iconic queens might lie just meters away behind untouched plaster is almost too tantalizing to abandon. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities remains cautious. No one wants to damage Tutankhamun's delicate, decorated walls chasing shadows. But other leads exist. In Amarna, where Nefertiti and Akhenaten once reigned, archaeologists continue to search the cliffside tombs and ruined foundations for traces. The royal necropolis there contains several unfinished or empty chambers. Some speculate Nefertiti was originally buried there, only to be moved during the violent religious restoration. But moved where? That answer remains elusive. DNA testing introduced another twist. In a tomb designated KV-35, researchers identified a mummy known as the Younger Lady. Genetic tests confirmed she was the mother of Tutankhamun. But could she be Nefertiti? The evidence is murky. While the maternal link is clear, other identifying markers, age at death, physical features, burial treatment, don't fully align with what we'd expect for someone of Nefertiti's status. Complicating matters further is ancient Egypt's own tendency toward erasure. When dynasties changed or ideologies shifted, pharaohs would destroy the monuments of predecessors they deemed heretical. Names were chiseled out, faces were defaced, records rewritten. Nefertiti, once celebrated, became politically inconvenient. Her disappearance from history might not be the result of fate, but of design. Yet, ironically, attempts to erase her only magnified her mystery. We now search for her not in texts, but in gaps, not in images, but in absences. Her face survives, but only as an artifact, a riddle without a location. Modern Egyptology is not giving up. Advances in ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, drone mapping, and molecular archaeology are all converging to revisit old sites with new eyes. Every scan, every anomaly, every re-examined shaft is a potential key. And while bureaucracy and preservation ethics slow the pace of exploration, the mystery of Nefertiti continues to captivate. She may not be the most powerful ruler of Egypt, or even the most historically significant, but she is undeniably the most haunting. Her absence is her legacy, a queen without a tomb, a presence without a place. And until the sands give her back, the mystery remains open, lingering like incense in the dark corridors of Egypt's lost past. Tutankhamun's tomb is the most famous archaeological discovery of the 20th century. Yet, a century later, it may still be hiding secrets. When Howard Carter broke through the sealed doorway in 1922, he found a nearly intact burial chamber filled with gold, statues, weapons, and ritual artifacts. It was a breathtaking find, unmatched in scale or preservation. But amid the spectacle, something curious stood out. The tomb was surprisingly small. Compared to other pharaohs, Tutankhamun's final resting place seemed hastily arranged. Some walls were unfinished. The layout was irregular. Rooms felt cramped. And the murals, while beautiful, appeared rushed. To some, these were quirks. To others, they were clues. Clues that the tomb wasn't meant for him at all. British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves became one of the most vocal proponents of that idea. In 2015, while studying high-resolution scans of the tomb's north and west walls, Reeves noticed subtle indentations, straight vertical lines beneath the painted surface. He believed these lines indicated sealed doorways, covered over in plaster and art. If true, the murals might be disguising hidden chambers just beyond. His theory gained traction quickly. It dovetailed with historical anomalies. Tutankhamun died unexpectedly at a young age, likely before his own tomb was complete. Royal officials, under immense pressure to bury the king quickly, may have adapted an existing tomb, possibly Nefertiti's. Reeves's proposition was simple, yet revolutionary. Part of Tutankhamun's tomb wasn't his at all. It was hers. He was interred in the outer corridors, while her chambers lay untouched behind decorated walls. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities responded with cautious curiosity. The stakes were enormous. If Reeves was right, this would be the most significant Egyptian discovery since Carter's. Ground-penetrating radar scans were authorized. The first results were exciting, echoes consistent with empty spaces. News headlines erupted. The world waited. But scientific consensus did not come quickly. Further radar scans produced inconsistent data. One team detected voids, another saw nothing. Japanese specialists used synthetic aperture radar and reported no anomalies. Italian researchers with hyperspectral imaging added more ambiguity. The walls themselves, built from uneven limestone, created noise in the data. Visual artifacts difficult to interpret. What one team called a cavity, another dismissed as geological variation. The results weren't wrong, just open to too many readings. The mystery deepened. Despite inconclusive data, the possibility remained irresistible. Tutankhamun's tomb, after all, had always seemed anomalous. It faced the wrong direction compared to most royal tombs. Its layout lacked the complexity of other New Kingdom burials, and its burial chamber had a peculiar detail. The paintings on the north wall showed Tutankhamun receiving burial rites from Ai, his successor. But Ai was already old when Tutankhamun died, and his depiction in the tomb seems unusually prominent. Some scholars believe this scene was added hastily, replacing an earlier depiction of Nefertiti. Others argue the paint itself was analyzed and showed no signs of alteration. As with everything in this mystery, evidence points in multiple directions, each one plausible, none definitive. The tomb whispers secrets, but refuses to shout. The ethical question looms larger than the scientific ones. Should we risk damaging the tomb in pursuit of uncertain chambers? Tutankhamun's burial is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its fragile plaster, ancient pigments, and historical importance make invasive investigation dangerous. One misplaced probe or drill could irreparably damage artwork that survived over 3,000 years. And so, archaeologists are forced into a frustrating compromise. They can only look with instruments, never touch. Even those who believe Reeves's theory acknowledge this constraint. Technology races ahead, but cultural preservation holds the reins. New generations of scanning tools, muon tomography, cosmic ray imaging, microgravity surveys, promise better clarity without risk. Yet each scan still demands interpretation. And interpretation is where certainty ends and debate begins. For now, Tutankhamun's tomb remains exactly as Carter left it, still, sealed, and stubborn. If there is a hidden chamber, it continues to elude even the most advanced tools. And if there isn't, the absence only fuels the mystery further. Because the story of this tomb has never been about what we already know. It's about what might still be hidden. That's what captivated the world in 1922, and what continues to hold its grip today. The possibility that a forgotten room, a sealed passage, a royal mummy, maybe even Nefertiti herself, lies just beyond a painted wall is a reminder of how little we've truly uncovered. Egypt's sands hide their truths well. And sometimes, even gold-filled chambers aren't the final chapter. They're just the beginning. It stares across the desert with eyes carved in stone, as it has for thousands of years. The great Sphinx of Giza, silent and eroded, remains one of the most iconic and perplexing monuments on Earth. towering over the sands near the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx has been the subject of wonder, legend, and scientific inquiry for generations. Its lion body and human face seem to guard not just the necropolis, but secrets buried beneath its paws. For decades, rumors have circulated of chambers, tunnels, or archives hidden below the statue. Some claim these spaces hold treasures. Others believe they preserve forbidden knowledge. And while Egyptology has traditionally dismissed such ideas, evidence continues to surface suggesting these stories may contain a grain of truth. The earliest references to hidden spaces beneath the Sphinx appear in ancient Egyptian texts and temple inscriptions. Some speak cryptically of sacred rooms or vaults of knowledge near the Sphinx's location. These may be metaphorical, but in a culture where symbolism and physical reality often intertwined, metaphors can mask actual structures. During the 20th century, these myths gained new attention, thanks in part to the claims of American mystic Edgar Cayce. In the 1930s, Cayce predicted that a hall of records containing the lost wisdom of Atlantis would be discovered beneath the Sphinx's right paw. Though Cayce's visions were not based on archaeological evidence, his popularity helped revive interest in the possibility of hidden structures. By the 1970s, this curiosity had reached mainstream science. Teams from Egypt and the United States began conducting seismic surveys and ground-penetrating radar scans around the Sphinx. The results were surprising. Several studies indicated the presence of anomalies, hollow areas beneath or near the statue. In particular, a 1990 seismic survey, led by Thomas DeBecke and John Anthony West, revealed significant subsurface cavities near the Sphinx's front paws and along its flanks. While these findings didn't confirm man-made chambers, they suggested voids large enough to merit further investigation. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities acknowledged the results, but declined to excavate further, citing preservation concerns. The structure, after all, has suffered millennia of erosion and environmental stress. Any misstep could prove disastrous. The tension between curiosity and conservation defines the Sphinx mystery. On one hand, modern technologies offer unprecedented tools to look beneath the surface. Radar, thermal imaging, muon detection, and microgravity scanning can reveal what lies underground without a single shovel lifted. On the other, the monument's fragility demands restraint. Digging, drilling, or even minor invasive probes could destabilize a structure already weathered by thousands of years of wind, sand, and neglect. Yet, each new scan continues to fuel speculation. Thermal studies in 2015 showed unexpected temperature differentials along the base of the statue, potentially indicating hidden chambers. Some researchers argue these anomalies are natural, resulting from differences in stone density or moisture retention. Others believe they mark entrances long sealed and forgotten. What adds weight to the chamber theory is that the Sphinx itself remains something of an architectural enigma. Unlike Egypt's pyramids and temples, which are composed of individually placed blocks, the Sphinx was carved directly from a single mass of limestone bedrock. That monolithic approach suggests it was shaped in place, leaving the surrounding bedrock open to additional modification. Over the years, researchers have documented shafts, tunnels, and niches carved into and around the statue. Some were clearly made during later repair or restoration efforts. Others remain unexplained. In the 1920s, French engineer Émile Barrès documented a tunnel descending behind the Sphinx's head. Another shaft opens near the tail. At least one narrow passage appears to run along the flank. Their purposes, ritual, exploratory, or something else, remain uncertain. Egypt's authorities have sealed most of these openings, citing safety concerns and preservation policy. Still, their existence proves that human hands altered the Sphinx long after its creation. Could some of these modifications have concealed deeper entrances? The possibility cannot be ruled out. Beneath the Giza plateau lies a labyrinth of natural and man-made cavities. Tombs, shafts, and underground chambers dot the entire area. The so-called Osiris shaft, discovered nearby, plunges over 100 feet into the bedrock, revealing multiple levels of crypts and corridors. The Sphinx may well be sitting atop a similar network. If any monument would be chosen to guard an archive, a tomb, or a ceremonial chamber, it would be this one. Half man, half lion, eternally watchful. And its colossal paws, resting quietly in the sand, would make the perfect symbolic threshold. Yet the idea of hidden chambers has always met resistance from orthodox archaeology. Egyptologists warn that sensational theories often distract from real scientific work. They point out that no known texts explicitly describe a hall of records or any vault beneath the Sphinx. Furthermore, interpreting radar or seismic anomalies requires nuance. Voids can be natural fissures or pockets created by ancient quarrying. Without excavation, interpretations remain speculative. Still, the consistency of certain findings across multiple independent studies makes it difficult to dismiss the idea entirely. When different teams using different technologies at different times report similar anomalies beneath the same structure, something merits further scrutiny. The question is not whether something lies beneath the Sphinx. It's what, if anything, we're willing to risk to find it. For now, Egypt has chosen caution. The Sphinx, heavily weathered and under constant environmental threat, demands protection above all. No one wants to be remembered as the archaeologist who cracked its foundation chasing ghosts. But technology continues to improve. Non-invasive imaging becomes more precise each year. One day soon, a breakthrough method may reveal a definitive answer, yes or no, without lifting a single stone. Until then, the Sphinx remains as it always has, a guardian of riddles, a monument to silence, and perhaps the gatekeeper to something long hidden. Its eyes face east, toward the rising sun, watching a world it no longer speaks to, yet still influences. Whatever lies beneath it, real or imagined, is part of its mystery now, part of why it endures. In the heart of ancient Thebes, under blistering sun and wind-carved columns, stands the Temple of Karnak, vast, labyrinthine, and alive with echoes. Unlike the solemn silence of tombs, Karnak radiates ritual. It was not built for the dead, but for gods. Towering pillars stretch toward the sky, colossal statues mark its processional paths, and hieroglyphs blanket every surface. For over 1,500 years, this was the spiritual capital of Egypt, dedicated primarily to Amun, king of the gods. The temple complex expanded with each pharaoh who sought favor from the divine. But despite its grandeur and documentation, many of the temple's most sacred rituals remain puzzling. Inscriptions record them, relics hint at them. Yet the core mechanics, what the priests did, why they did it, and how they understood its impact, still evade full explanation. Among Karnak's best documented ceremonies is the Opet festival. Held annually, it was an elaborate public and private celebration. Statues of Amun, Mut, and Khonsu were paraded from Karnak to the Luxor temple along a ceremonial avenue. Thousands gathered. Musicians played. Priests carried sacred barks. But within this open spectacle lay closed-door mysteries. Inside Karnak's hidden chambers, rituals occurred that were never meant for ordinary eyes. Reliefs show priests making offerings, performing gestures, and uttering invocations. But they offer little context. What exact words were spoken? What did each movement symbolize? Even when rituals were described, they often used coded language. Metaphor layered upon metaphor, symbol buried within symbol. The deeper meaning was reserved for the initiated, passed down orally among the high clergy. Daily rituals were equally obscure. Priests awoke before dawn to enter the sanctum, bathe statues, dress them in linen, apply perfumes, and present offerings of bread, beer, meat, and incense. These acts mirrored human routines, washing, dressing, feeding, but were infused with cosmic weight. By caring for the gods' images, priests believed they sustained Mahat, the divine order of the universe. Neglecting a statue wasn't mere disrespect, it threatened cosmic balance. Yet again, while we know the basic structure of these rituals, much of the nuance remains out of reach. How were the prayers structured? Did tone or pitch affect outcome? Were certain days more potent? Papyrus scrolls reference hidden formulas, suggesting that spoken words activated divine presence. But no scroll lists the full formulae. They were too sacred, too powerful, too secret to write. Even more enigmatic were the rituals tied to Karnak's sacred lake. This large artificial basin within the temple grounds served both practical and mystical functions. Priests purified themselves there before entering the temple. But some inscriptions suggest the lake was also used in nighttime ceremonies, possibly involving lunar cycles or star alignments. At certain times of the year, reflections of specific constellations could be seen in the water. Orion, Sirius, or the circumpolar stars associated with rebirth. Texts hint at mirror rituals, where priests gazed into the lake to divine messages or to commune with deities through celestial reflection. But again, the records are maddeningly vague. They allude to the water that speaks, the moon that answers, or the hidden god in reflection. Were these metaphors, or actual rites that involved astronomical observation and spiritual contact? Without fuller records, no one knows. Animal symbolism also played a central role in Karnak's mysteries. Sacred rams, geese, and even crocodiles were cared for within temple grounds, seen not as symbols, but as living avatars of the gods. Some animals were paraded during festivals, others were ritually fed and clothed, and a few were even mummified after death and buried in elaborate tombs. But some rituals involving these creatures remain unclear. In certain carvings, priests are shown whispering into the ears of sacred animals, perhaps conveying divine secrets or requesting oracles. In others, animals are seen touching ritual items or being placed before burning incense. One inscription refers to the goose that flies between worlds. Another, to the ram whose gaze opens the gate of rebirth. These phrases are rich with meaning, but resist firm translation. They belong to a worldview where animal behavior, celestial movement, and human speech were all spiritually linked. Perhaps the most impenetrable mystery involves the oracles at Karnak. Pharaohs and commoners alike sought divine answers through these consultations, which took place during festival processions. A statue of Amun, carried on a bark, would be asked a question. If the statue paused, turned, or moved in a certain way, the priests interpreted the response. But how were these responses choreographed? Were there hidden mechanisms? Did priests manipulate the statue's movement, or were they in a trance-like state of receptivity? Some scholars believe carefully trained priests performed calculated gestures. Others propose altered consciousness or mass psychological suggestion. Whatever the case, the outcome was accepted as the will of the gods. The oracle decided lawsuits, land disputes, and royal successions. Yet the mechanism, spiritual, psychological, or theatrical, remains unknown. The core of the mystery may lie in the priesthood's extreme secrecy. To enter Karnak's innermost sanctums, one underwent years of initiation. Knowledge was not written, it was embodied, guarded, transmitted through ritual and presence. Even among priests, access was stratified. Some roles permitted only limited participation, others required bloodline, purity, and proven loyalty. This internal opacity makes it nearly impossible for modern scholars to reconstruct the full scope of their practices. What survives are fragments, tools, relics, partially deciphered spells, and monuments heavy with symbolism. They tell us that something profound happened here, but not what it truly meant. And so Karnak endures, a temple of echoes, where every pillar hides a question, and every inscription is a door left ajar but never opened. Deep beneath the sands of Saqqara, in an underground chamber cut directly into bedrock, lies a corridor lined with stone boxes so massive they defy simple explanation. This is the Serapeum, a necropolis associated with the sacred Apis bulls of ancient Egypt. Discovered in the 19th century by French archaeologist Auguste Mariette, the Serapeum immediately captured scholarly attention not just for what was found inside, but for what was missing. Within its long, vaulted corridors sit over 24 sarcophagi carved from solid granite, each weighing up to 80 tons with their lids. Their craftsmanship is extraordinary. Polished interiors, perfectly squared angles, smooth surfaces that reflect light after thousands of years. These weren't crude containers. They were engineered with purpose, precision, and silence. The conventional explanation has long linked the Serapeum to the Apis cult. According to ancient texts, the Apis bull was considered a living manifestation of the god Ptah, and later Osiris. When one of these sacred bulls died, it was buried with honor in a stone sarcophagus, with offerings and inscriptions to guide it into the afterlife. The Serapeum, then, was assumed to be a ceremonial graveyard, but problems arise immediately. First, the sheer size of these boxes seems excessive, even for the burial of large animals. Second, and more importantly, many of the sarcophagi were completely empty. No bones, no offerings, no inscriptions inside. The stone lids had been sealed and later broken open, but what they once held remains unknown. And in some cases, evidence suggests they were never occupied at all. Then there is the mystery of the craftsmanship. Carving, transporting, and installing multi-ton blocks of Aswan granite, then polishing them to such tolerances would be difficult even today. Engineers have noted that the precision in some boxes rivals modern machining. Perfect 90-degree corners, surfaces accurate to within fractions of a millimeter, lids weighing up to 30 tons that fit seamlessly on their bases. And all of this achieved in narrow subterranean tunnels, with no evidence of cranes or lifting equipment. The logistics boggle the mind. How were these boxes lowered into place? What tools were used? Why such precision for objects that were never publicly displayed, never seen once sealed, and, more puzzling still, possibly never used? The lack of decorative elements only deepens the enigma. Some scholars argue that the Serapeum's oversized sarcophagi served purely symbolic purposes. Perhaps they were Tutankhamun's tomb, after all, had always seemed anomalous. It faced the wrong direction compared to most royal tombs. Its layout lacked the complexity of other New Kingdom burials, and its burial chamber had a peculiar detail. The paintings on the north wall showed Tutankhamun receiving burial rites from Ai, his successor. But Ai was already old when Tutankhamun died. and his depiction in the tomb seems unusually prominent. Some scholars believe this scene was added hastily, replacing an earlier depiction of Nefertiti. Others argue the paint itself was analyzed and showed no signs of alteration. As with everything in this mystery, evidence points in multiple directions, each one plausible, none definitive. The tomb whispers secrets, but refuses to shout. The ethical question looms larger than the scientific ones. Should we risk damaging the tomb in pursuit of uncertain chambers? Tutankhamun's burial is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its fragile plaster, ancient pigments, and historical importance make invasive investigation dangerous. One misplaced probe or drill could irreparably damage artwork that survived over 3,000 years. And so, archaeologists are forced into a frustrating compromise. They can only look with instruments, never touch. Even those who believe Reeves's theory acknowledge this constraint. Technology races ahead, but cultural preservation holds the reins. New generations of scanning tools, muon tomography, cosmic ray imaging, microgravity surveys, promise better clarity without risk. Yet each scan still demands interpretation, and interpretation is where certainty ends and debate begins. For now, Tutankhamun's tomb remains exactly as Carter left it, still, sealed, and stubborn. If there is a hidden chamber, it continues to elude even the most advanced tools. And if there isn't, the absence only fuels the mystery further. Because the story of this tomb has never been about what we already know. It's about what might still be hidden. That's what captivated the world in 1922, and what continues to hold its grip today. The possibility that a forgotten room, a sealed passage, a royal mummy, maybe even Nefertiti herself, lies just beyond a painted wall is a reminder of how little we've truly uncovered. Egypt's sands hide their truths well. And sometimes, even gold-filled chambers aren't the final chapter. They're just the beginning. It stares across the desert with eyes carved in stone, as it has for thousands of years. The great Sphinx of Giza, silent and eroded, remains one of the most iconic and perplexing monuments on Earth. Towering over the sands near the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx has been the subject of wonder, legend, and scientific inquiry for generations. Its lion body and human face seem to guard not just the necropolis, but secrets buried beneath its paws. For decades, rumors have circulated of chambers, tunnels, or archives hidden below the statue. Some claim these spaces hold, no longer speak. Until someone finds the missing key, the Serapeum remains exactly what it looks like. A place where answers were locked away long ago and never retrieved. Ankhesenamun was born into one of the most volatile chapters in Egyptian history. The daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, she lived through a religious revolution that upended millennia of tradition, only to watch it collapse in her youth. She was married, likely in her early teens, to the young boy king Tutankhamun, who had just reversed his father's radical reforms. Together, they reinstated the old gods, restored temples, and attempted to stabilize a shaken kingdom. But after just a few years, Tutankhamun died. Suddenly, mysteriously, and without an heir. And Ankhesenamun, once queen of the most powerful nation on Earth, vanished almost entirely from the historical record. No confirmed tomb, no confirmed mummy. Not even a conclusive mention in royal chronicles after her husband's funeral. For someone of such status, her silence is deafening. Yet, fragments remain. The most compelling piece of the puzzle is a series of letters found in the archives of the Hittite Empire, ancient Egypt's northern rival. In one such letter, an unnamed Egyptian queen, recently widowed and childless, writes to the Hittite king Suppiluliuma I with an extraordinary request: to send one of his sons to Egypt so she might marry him and secure the throne. The letter, known as the Dakamunzu Correspondence, describes her desperation. "Never shall I take a servant of mine and make him my husband," she wrote. "I am afraid." The implication is clear. The queen feared being forced into marriage with a non-royal Egyptian noble. Historians widely believe this unnamed queen was Ankhesenamun. The timeline fits. The circumstances match. And the stakes, political, religious, dynastic, could not have been higher. The Hittite king was understandably cautious, suspecting a trap. But after inquiries, he sent his son, Prince Zananza, to Egypt. He never made it. Somewhere en route, possibly at the border, Zananza was killed under suspicious circumstances. The event triggered a diplomatic crisis. The Hittites blamed Egyptian factions for the murder, and relations between the two empires deteriorated sharply. For Ankhesenamun, this event may have been fatal. Politically, if not literally. She disappears from history entirely after this. No further letters, no inscriptions, no funerary artifacts. Her name is absent from subsequent monuments, and no tomb definitively identified as hers has ever been found. It is as though she was deliberately erased. Several theories have emerged to explain Ankhesenamun's disappearance. One possibility is that she was forced to marry Ai, the elderly vizier who succeeded Tutankhamun. A blue faience ring discovered in the early 20th century bears both their names, suggesting a political marriage that legitimized Ai's brief rule. But beyond the ring, no other evidence confirms their union. Ankhesenamun's image is conspicuously absent from Ai's tomb. No inscriptions refer to her role as his queen. If she did marry Ai, she may have been quietly removed from public life or even eliminated once her political usefulness ended. Another theory posits that she was imprisoned or exiled, viewed as a threat by powerful factions within the court. Her royal blood, tied to the heretical Amarna lineage, made her both valuable and dangerous. A more tantalizing possibility is that she died shortly after Tutankhamun, either from illness, political assassination, or childbirth complications. In that case, the absence of a tomb becomes even more perplexing. Egyptian tradition placed immense importance on funerary rites. A queen, especially one of Ankhesenamun's stature, would not have been left without a burial unless her memory was intentionally suppressed. Some Egyptologists suggest that her tomb may lie undiscovered near the Valley of the Kings or in the so-called Western Valley, a less explored section of the royal necropolis. Others believe she could be one of the unidentified female mummies already recovered. Perhaps even the younger lady mummy found in tomb KV-35, though DNA results remain inconclusive. In recent years, radar surveys and exploratory digs have focused on a region west of Ai's tomb in the Valley of the Monkeys. Archaeologist Zahi Hawass has stated publicly that the area may contain a hidden tomb, possibly that of Ankhesenamun. Preliminary scans have shown promising anomalies, but political complications and limited funding have slowed progress. If her tomb is ever found, it could dramatically reshape our understanding of the late 18th dynasty. Artifacts, inscriptions, or DNA evidence might confirm her identity, reveal the circumstances of her death, and clarify the murky transition between Tutankhamun and Ai. For now, she remains a ghost, present in the silences between records, in the gaps between dynasties, in the letters no one replied to. Ankhesenamun's story, or lack thereof, exemplifies how power and memory were tightly controlled in ancient Egypt. A person's name, when spoken or carved, guaranteed their eternal existence. to be erased was a kind of second death. Whether by political necessity, religious orthodoxy, or tragic accident, Ankhesenamun was lost to history's margins. Yet her absence continues to haunt the archaeological record. She is the queen who should be there, but isn't. Her fate, like that of Nefertiti, remains one of ancient Egypt's most profound unsolved mysteries. And until her tomb is found, or her mummy identified, we're left with fragments, whispers, and a name waiting to be spoken again. Rising from the Giza plateau like an angular mountain, the Great Pyramid of Khufu has stood for more than 4,500 years. Its shape unaltered, its purpose unmistakable, and its construction still unexplained. It weighs approximately 6 million tons. It contains over 2.3 million stone blocks. Some of those blocks weigh as much as 80 tons, and they were transported from quarries dozens, even hundreds of kilometers away. The precision of its orientation, almost perfectly aligned with true north, remains unmatched. And for all its size and grandeur, the pyramid was built without wheels, cranes, or iron tools. At least, that's what the archaeological record suggests. For generations, Egyptologists have agreed. The pyramid was built by thousands of laborers over decades, using simple tools and wooden sledges. But even they admit, many details are still missing. One dominant theory proposes the use of massive ramps, either straight or spiraling, to haul blocks up to the growing pyramid. The idea is logical. With enough workers, logs, and time, almost anything can be dragged. But the theory has problems. First, no such ramp has ever been found at Giza. If a straight ramp were used, it would have had to extend for over a mile, made from millions of additional tons of material, and then been completely dismantled, leaving no trace. A spiral ramp presents a different issue. How would workers have maneuvered massive stones around corners without toppling them? Some scholars suggest internal ramps built into the structure itself. In 2007, a French architect proposed that the pyramid was constructed from the inside out, using a hidden spiral passage. While intriguing, this idea also lacks definitive archaeological evidence. Others turn to less conventional explanations. Some engineers argue that a primitive counterweight system could have been used, involving ropes, pulleys, and weighted levers. Others believe water played a role, using canal systems or buoyancy-based lifts. Experimental archaeologists have attempted to replicate these techniques, with varying degrees of success. But no reconstruction has managed to demonstrate how such extreme precision, especially in internal chambers, was achieved. The King's Chamber, for example, contains giant granite beams placed with millimetric alignment. These beams came from Aswan, more than 800 kilometers south, and were installed over 40 meters above the ground. How were they raised? No one knows for certain. The question becomes not only how the blocks were moved, but why they were moved with such obsessive accuracy. The enigma deepens when considering the pyramid's astronomical precision. Its sides are aligned within a fraction of a degree to the cardinal points: north, south, east, and west. The base is nearly perfectly level, despite uneven bedrock. Some researchers believe the builders used stars like Sirius or Orion's belt to achieve alignment. Others propose the use of shadow tracking or water leveling tools. Whatever the method, the result remains staggering. Even with today's GPS and laser tools, replicating that level of accuracy on such a massive scale would be difficult. And yet, ancient builders achieved it with copper tools, stone hammers, and mathematical knowledge they supposedly hadn't yet developed. Or did they? That's the question that keeps resurfacing. Was this engineering genius the result of incremental knowledge, or something we've yet to fully understand? Inside the pyramid, the mysteries multiply. The Grand Gallery, an ascending passage over 8 meters high, is constructed with corbelled stones so precisely placed that not even a razor blade fits between them. The air shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers, once thought to be ventilation tunnels, align with celestial bodies. Robotic probes have explored these shafts, revealing small doors, copper fittings, and unexplained chambers. In 2017, an international team used muon tomography to scan the pyramid's interior. The results were stunning. A large void, at least 30 meters long, was detected above the Grand Gallery. Its function remains unknown. Is it a hidden chamber, a structural anomaly, a decoy? Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities has yet to authorize physical exploration. Once again, we're left with radar images and speculation. Even more baffling is the absence of hieroglyphs or inscriptions inside the pyramid. Unlike later tombs, the Great Pyramid contains no prayers, no carvings, no dedications to gods. The only writing discovered is a series of red ochre marks in an upper chamber, likely left by work crews. For a monument of such scale and religious significance, this silence is eerie. Was it intentional? A display of purity? A departure from funerary convention? Or was the pyramid's true purpose something else entirely? Something no longer recorded in surviving texts? Mainstream scholars caution against overinterpretation. Simplicity, they argue, does not require a conspiracy. But the pyramid's sheer scale and silent design continue to fuel doubt. Not fringe theories necessarily, but curiosity that refuses to settle. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not how the pyramid was built, but why. We know it was meant as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, but no body was ever found, no sarcophagus in the king's chamber, no trace of funerary equipment. If robbers removed these items, they left no sign. If the body was never placed, then was the structure ever completed? Was it sealed for symbolic reasons, or never opened at all? These questions endure because the Great Pyramid defies easy answers. It is, in essence, a riddle in stone, one that has watched empires rise and fall, civilizations bloom and fade. And still it stands, massive and mute, daring us to understand how and why it came to be. Walk through the tombs of the Valley of the Kings or the temples of Luxor, and you'll see it everywhere. Faces chiseled away, names scratched out, figures defaced. It's not the work of time or looters. It's deliberate, it's personal, and it's ancient. The Egyptians, obsessed as they were with immortality, also developed a terrifying counterweight. Damnatio memoriae, the erasure of memory. In a culture where to speak a name was to keep a soul alive, destroying that name was to condemn it to oblivion. Death wasn't enough. Some had to be annihilated from history. Pharaohs did it to rivals, priests did it to heretics, families did it to disgraced ancestors. And the tools they used weren't swords, they were chisels. The motivations were as varied as the victims. Political rivalry was chief among them. After the death of Akhenaten, whose radical monotheism disrupted every norm, Egypt's rulers launched a systematic campaign to erase him. His name was removed from king lists. His images defaced, his monuments dismantled. Even his tomb, KV 55, shows signs of this vengeance. The coffin was stripped of gold. The cartouches were scratched out. The body was left without identity. This was no careless oversight. It was calculated erasure. And Akhenaten wasn't alone. His queen, Nefertiti, suffered similar fates. So did their descendants. By the time Tutankhamun restored the old gods, Egypt was in full historical purge mode, scrubbing away not just religious heresy, but the people who embodied it. Then there's the case of Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs. For decades, she ruled successfully, building monuments, expanding trade, and commissioning grand temples like Deir el-Bahari. But after her death, her stepson Thutmose III began a campaign to erase her legacy. Statues were smashed. Her name was replaced. In reliefs, her face was meticulously carved away. Why? Historians debate. Some argue it was political, a way to assert Thutmose's unbroken rule. Others believe it was ideological, a rejection of female kingship. Regardless, the result was the same. Her story nearly vanished. Only in the 19th century, when archaeologists uncovered the layers of destruction, did Hatshepsut's reign re-emerge from beneath the scars. Not all defacement came from the top. Sometimes it was personal. Tombs belonging to high officials, viziers, priests, nobles, show signs of selective damage. A servant figure might be left intact, while the master's name is erased. A face might be removed, but the inscription remains. These aren't acts of random vandalism. They are targeted. In some cases, rival families may have sought to undermine a competitor's legacy. In others, political purges reached even the bureaucratic elite. To damage a tomb was to unmake a person in the afterlife. It was, in a very real sense, spiritual assassination. The Egyptians believed a person existed in multiple forms: body, name, shadow, soul. And if you destroyed those components, you destroyed this person's eternity. Religion also played a role. As dynasties changed, so did the gods. Images of Seth, once revered, were later scratched away during periods of demonization. Entire temples to forgotten deities were repurposed or defaced. The result is a complex archaeological puzzle where clues have been intentionally buried or destroyed. In some temples, inscriptions have been recarved multiple times, each layer rewriting the last. In others, figures were left with missing eyes or hands, disabling their spiritual power without fully destroying them. These were not casual acts. They were coded messages, full of ritual intent. To gouge out a statue's eyes meant to blind it in the afterlife. To break its nose meant to suffocate its ka. To remove its feet meant to prevent it from walking among the living. Symbolism wasn't just decoration, it was weaponized. Even the tools of erasure were symbolic. Some defacements show signs of care, small, deliberate chisel marks. Others are violent, hacked with force. Some tombs were left only partially defaced, suggesting that the desecrators were interrupted or feared divine retribution. And sometimes, damage was reversed. Later generations, seeking forgiveness or legitimacy, would restore names and images. In doing so, they restored spiritual continuity. But in many cases, the damage was final. Faces gone, history silenced, legacies erased. What we're left with are ghosts, hollow silhouettes in stone, reminders of the fragility of memory and the politics of eternity. Modern archaeologists, through 3D scanning and spectral imaging, are beginning to reconstruct what was lost. Hidden under layers of plaster or soot, names and titles reappear. Erased figures can be digitally restored. Through this process, a new kind of Egyptology emerges. One not just of discovery, but of resurrection. Every recovered name is a person returned to history. Every repaired relief is a lifeline to a forgotten world. And yet, not all will be recovered. Some were destroyed too thoroughly, erased too completely. They remain unknowable, unnamed, lost by design. In a civilization that believed memory was immortality, their fate is the closest thing to eternal death. For centuries, Heracleion existed only in myth, mentioned in ancient Greek texts. It was said to be a city of immense wealth, sacred temples, and bustling harbors, a gateway where Egypt met the Mediterranean. But as time passed, the stories blurred. Scholars debated whether Heracleion ever existed at all, or whether it was simply a confused echo of more famous cities like Alexandria or Canopus. No maps marked its location. No monuments bore its name. Until the year 2000, when marine archaeologist Frank Goddio and his team made a startling discovery beneath the waters of Abu Qir Bay, off Egypt's northern coast. There, under layers of silt and sediment, lay the remains of a forgotten metropolis, its name preserved on stone steles. Thonis Heracleion. It was real. And it had been waiting. Excavations revealed a city frozen in time. Massive temple foundations, granite statues standing upright on the seafloor, stone anchors, gold coins, ceremonial objects, shipwrecks still carrying cargo, everything eerily intact. The city had not been destroyed by war or fire. It had been swallowed by the sea. Geological analysis suggests a combination of earthquakes, soil liquefaction, and gradual subsidence caused Heracleion to collapse and sink sometime around the 2nd or 3rd century BCE. Rising sea levels and a shifting Nile delta sealed its fate. What was once a vibrant port became a ghost city beneath the waves. But in its burial, it was preserved. The water, the silt, the absence of air, all of it acted as a time capsule, shielding Heracleion from decay. The site's scale stunned archaeologists. Stretching over 11 square kilometers, Heracleion was larger and more influential than previously imagined. It predated Alexandria and served as the primary customs port for Egyptian trade with the Mediterranean. All ships entering Egypt were required to dock there, unload cargo, and pay duties before continuing upriver. As a result, Heracleion became a melting pot of cultures: Greek, Egyptian, Phoenician, and more. The recovered artifacts reflect this diversity. Greek amphorae, Egyptian ceremonial stelae, coins bearing the faces of foreign rulers, all lying side by side, testimony to a cosmopolitan center once thought lost. And still, much of the city remains unexplored. Every season brings new discoveries, each one rewriting history. Among the most remarkable finds were the colossal statues, some over 5 meters tall, recovered from the submerged ruins of Heracleion's central temple. These figures, carved from red granite, depict Egyptian gods like Hapi, Isis, and Osiris, confirming the city's religious significance. Inscriptions on temple blocks refer to ceremonies performed to bless incoming ships, purify goods, and honor the gods of both land and sea. Offerings were discovered clustered around these statues: gold jewelry, figurines, incense burners, still arranged in patterns that match descriptions from ancient texts. One stele, inscribed in both Greek and Egyptian, mentions a royal decree authorizing trade rights and temple duties, hinting at the city's dual identity, both sacred and administrative, spiritual and commercial. Perhaps even more fascinating is what the city reveals about cross-cultural interaction. Heracleion, or Thonis to the Egyptians, was not a static port. It was a living blend of Egyptian ritual and Hellenistic pragmatism. Temples followed Egyptian design, but inscriptions featured Greek syntax. Egyptian priests wore traditional linen, but administered taxes alongside Greek scribes. Foreign merchants left behind coins, ceramics, and weights, all standardized to Mediterranean systems. And yet, the sacred lake in the city center remained purely Egyptian, used for purification rituals before temple entry, just as it had been for centuries. This cultural hybridity suggests that Heracleion was more than a trading hub. It was a point of translation between worlds, where the rituals of Egypt met the rationalism of Greece. and both adapted. The city's sudden submergence has only deepened the mystery. Why were so many temples and statues left untouched, undismantled? Why were sacred objects found still in place, as if time simply stopped? One theory posits a rapid seismic event, a combination of liquefaction and tectonic activity that caused large portions of land to sink within hours or days. Another theory involves political shifts. By the time Heracleion collapsed, Alexandria had risen. Trade had shifted, rituals had migrated, and Heracleion had become symbolic more than central. If its fall was sudden, it would explain the preservation. If it was slow, it would reflect a city abandoned by time. Left to fade beneath the rising tide, its stones no longer needed, its gods no longer served. Modern underwater archaeology continues to peel back Heracleion's secrets, using sonar, magnetometers, photogrammetry, and remotely operated vehicles. Researchers map the city's layout with extraordinary accuracy. Each new artifact adds a thread to the narrative. And yet, the larger picture remains incomplete. How many more statues lie buried under silt? Were there deeper temple complexes, a royal palace, hidden archives? So far, only 5% of the area has been excavated. What lies beneath the other 95% may challenge everything we think we know. Not just about Heracleion, but about Egypt's relationship with the sea, with foreign powers, and with its own identity. Until then, Heracleion rests below the waves, half seen, half known. A city that lived, died, and survived all at once. It is Egypt's Atlantis, not mythical, but material, not vanished, but submerged. And unlike most ruins, it doesn't crumble in wind and sun. It waits patiently beneath salt and silence, daring us to remember it before it sinks too far for memory to reach. The Great Sphinx of Giza is traditionally dated to around 2500 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. This conclusion is drawn from circumstantial but compelling evidence. The Sphinx faces Khafre's pyramid, sits beside his valley temple, and shares construction style with nearby monuments. No inscriptions directly link the Sphinx to Khafre, but Egyptologists generally agree on this association. Case closed. Or is it? Over the past 3 decades, a growing body of researchers, primarily geologists, have proposed a radically different theory, that the Sphinx is far older than Khafre's dynasty, possibly thousands of years older. Their primary evidence? Water, specifically the patterns of erosion along the Sphinx's enclosure walls. Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, first proposed the theory in the early 1990s. He argued that the vertical weathering on the enclosure walls could not have been caused by wind-blown sand, the dominant erosive force in a desert environment. Instead, the rounded, undulating patterns matched what one would expect from prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall. The problem is that Egypt hasn't seen that kind of rainfall in over 5,000 years. To account for such erosion, the Sphinx would need to have been carved during the Neolithic period, long before the emergence of dynastic Egypt. If Schoch is right, the Sphinx predates all known Egyptian monuments by millennia, and may have been created by a civilization we have yet to identify. Mainstream Egyptologists quickly pushed back. They argue that the erosion patterns can be explained by other means: salt crystallization, groundwater movement, or even quarrying techniques. They point out that the surrounding structures, the temples, causeways, and pyramids, fit neatly within the Old Kingdom timeline. To suggest the Sphinx predates them would require either a lost civilization or a rewriting of Egyptian chronology. Still, the geological evidence remains difficult to dismiss outright. Multiple geologists have independently confirmed the presence of precipitation-based erosion, and the Sphinx's disproportionate head, significantly smaller than its body, raises additional questions. Was it recarved? If so, what was its original form? A lion? A deity? A forgotten icon from a forgotten age? Some alternative researchers have proposed that the original Sphinx may have been a lion statue carved in prehistoric times, later reworked into a pharaonic likeness by Old Kingdom sculptors. This would explain the oddly small head, which seems disproportionately narrow and high compared to the massive body. It would also account for why the body shows advanced erosion while the head remains relatively intact. If true, the Sphinx could represent a rare example of monumental reappropriation, an ancient sculpture inherited, rebranded, and integrated into a newer civilization's narrative. But even this hybrid theory raises uncomfortable implications. Who carved the original? With what tools? And why has their existence left no trace elsewhere? Further complicating the mystery are the dream stela and the layout of the Giza plateau itself. The dream stela, erected by Pharaoh Thutmose IV between the paws of the Sphinx, describes a vision in which the Sphinx, already buried in sand, speaks to the prince and promises him kingship if he restores it. This inscription implies that even by the 1400s BCE, the Sphinx was considered ancient and partially forgotten. It also conspicuously fails to name the original builder, instead calling the Sphinx Khepri-Ra, the sun god. Could this be more than poetic reverence? Might the Sphinx's divine association have been a veiled admission that no one alive then knew its true origin? Other monuments in Egypt are meticulous about credit. The Sphinx, curiously, is silent. The Giza plateau, too, holds unexplained anomalies. Subsurface surveys have revealed a network of tunnels, shafts, and chambers beneath the area surrounding the Sphinx and pyramids. Some of these features are natural limestone fissures. Others appear man-made, but lack inscriptions, artifacts, or clear purpose. Could they be remnants of earlier construction phases, fragments of a lost pre-dynastic infrastructure? No one knows for certain. Egypt's authorities have been cautious about further excavation near the Sphinx, citing concerns about stability and preservation. Meanwhile, independent researchers continue to study the site using non-invasive tools like ground-penetrating radar, muon detection, and seismic imaging, technologies capable of detecting voids and structures buried deep within the plateau's limestone. If the Sphinx is indeed older than previously believed, the implications are profound. It would suggest that monumental architecture began not with dynastic Egypt, but with an earlier, undocumented culture. That civilization would have had to possess not only the tools and labor organization to carve the Sphinx, but also a symbolic or religious framework compelling enough to warrant its creation. It would mean that Egypt's most iconic monument is not a product of known history, but a relic from its forgotten foundation, until definitive evidence emerges. An inscription, a datable artifact, an unmistakable tool mark. The age of the Sphinx will remain a battleground between disciplines. But the debate itself is a testament to the monument's enduring power. The Sphinx doesn't just resist time, it resists certainty. And perhaps that's why we still return to it, generation after generation, drawn by the same riddle that has outlived empires. Who carved it? When? And why?